Well, it's that time again. This is episode 41 of the Malt Travail podcast. A week ago, we were all three of us sat in the Fox in York having some nice beers as part of their Bank Holiday Beer Festival. So I can't say whether the week's gone quick. I know it doesn't feel like it feels a long week we've had. So let me turn the music off. And good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Good stuff. I've just got back from Manchester. I've had a fairly beer-free day, although I did manage a pint of Madry, the wonderful Madry. We've been playing, whatever the word is, electronic cricket in the Corn Exchange. A lovely building and quite a strange setup, really. Anyway, well, maybe we'll leave that for another podcast. So what I say, a week ago we were in York. I met Bruce and his daughter, and we had a little bit of a stroll around a very hot sunny afternoon, wasn't it, in York last Sunday? Nick was working, so we met up at the Fox, and they were having a beer festival over the bank holiday weekend. It was very busy. All set up in the big beer garden, and we had a few beers, and then we went back to Brewster for a very nice chili. Yes, very nice indeed. So, gents, the plan this evening is back in episode 14, which was probably right in the middle of lockdown. We did a virtual pub crawl around Sheffield, and I think, Nick, it was mainly you and Bruce that put that one together, because you'd been not that long ago, I don't think, probably sometime in 2018 you'd been, obviously before lockdown. So I'm going to compare, because we actually went and did the real thing. Unfortunately, Bruce couldn't make us because it was a weekday and Bruce was at work or just back from holidays, but Nick had a day off in the week, so we met up a couple of Mondays ago. Stayed overnight, and we had a very good session we did. So we're going to talk you through that 13 pint. I think Nicholas actually managed 14 because he had one before me at the Doncaster tap, which we'll talk about in a minute. So that's the plan today, and we've called it Searching for Stones because, again, not the reason for the trip, but one little added thing to it was that Stones Bitter, which Sheffield was very famous for, the William Stones Brewery, has recently been revitalized, reintroduced by the True North Brewery. They managed to get hold of the Stones recipe, and I understand actually the Stones yeast as well. So we did manage to track down a pint of Stones, although I think we sat on the fence.
Who looked after yeast for all those years then, when it was like no brewing? Well,
I don't know if you know, there's the National Yeast Bank, apparently, a very building. Yes. I think it's somewhere down, I think it's near Milton Keynes, Semel Hempstead, something like that. And they actually keep, that's what they do to ensure that, because by all accounts, yeast is really important for lots of different things. But there is a National Yeast Bank, and what you do is breweries put their yeast there, and I guess it's like a laboratory. They keep the yeast alive and they keep regenerating them.
Them liberation people, Bruce, you keep threatening with yogurt. Release the yeast. Release the yeast.
So, beery highlights. So, as I said, we were in the Fox last week at their Summer Bank Holiday Beer Festival. Although I think in the end we actually found the beers inside were slightly better range than the beers that they had out in the outdoor thing there.
Well, they were virtually all out the Ossett stable anyway, weren't they? But
that's mainly, yeah.
That's nothing to moan about, because they've got a good range on, and it's a cracking pub. Recommend it to anybody.
So that was a good session.
They've got the capacity as well. You know, on a dry day, they've got a huge, great big beer garden, which Bruce has mentioned before. And then within the pub, they've got at least how many rooms, Bruce? About 4 or 5?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, 5 now.
Yeah, we got in that nice little room, didn't we, behind the bar? Yeah, we got in that nice little room behind the bar. We pretty much filled it with our family. It was quite nice. And then, Nick, I know we'll come up to this, but again, just because it's a new one for me, on your trip, on your journey to Sheffield, you changed to anything at Doncaster. And
by Doncaster, yeah.
Fairly new, isn't it? It's just 2017 there. So again, probably why I haven't been in there. There is now it's not actually called, it's called a Draftsman, isn't it? It's not actually a tap per se.
No, that's what confused me, because I Googled Doncaster tap and it came up in the middle of the city, and I thought, well, I've only got 20 minutes. Came in on platform 3A. All the electronic timetables, boards were down on that side of the station. So I had to jump on my phone looking for a train heading to Sheffield. Found out that it was actually on platform 3. So obviously I was like, 10, 20 yards away. Yeah. And as I walked down the platform to platform 3, looked to my right and saw this little spot. And in fact, it probably got more room outside than they have inside, because literally it is the size of size of a living room. But he had three cask beers on. He had quite a selection of craft beers as well. I think he was promoting 12 beers in total. So I thought, wonderful. I've got 15 minutes to wait for my train now. It's coming in on platform 3. I can literally sit here and wait for the train, the Northern Rail train to come in, spot it in the distance, and I can sup up and jump on. So that's what I did. And yeah, I had a pint of Here Comes the Wave, which at 11:05 on a Monday morning at 4.7 was probably not the best of starts to have, but it was a pleasant beer. And as I say, yeah, anybody passing through Doncaster Station, get yourself in there.
Yeah, that's neat, and that's Chin Chin Brewing Co., which I've not come across them before, so maybe I need to look them up. Yeah, so I've just got on the screen here for those on YouTube the What Pub description. So located on platform 3B at Doncaster Station, a newish venture, opened in 2017. One-man project. Camera member Russell Thompson did all the work and now runs it himself. Again, like many other of these Victorian stations, this was the former Victorian buffet bar. It stood empty for 18 years. And again, great that it's been revitalised as well. And real ales are changed regularly, also some regional brewers and micros. Locally made pies, baguettes, Yorkshire crisps, tea and coffee available. So yeah, definitely worth noting down. It's a nice little spot there as well.
So probably the best place to go for drinking Doncaster, that isn't it?
Yeah. So I was up in Yorkshire last weekend. So again, managed to get a few drinks on Saturday night with Nick. We went to the Triton in Sledmere, which is a very nice kind of village pub, and we had quite a few pints there, Nick, on Wall Top, didn't we? I think you had a landlord as well, and the Wall Top bit was very nice. And so met up with Bruce. So again, we're only a fairly mini tour, didn't we, Bruce? I met Bruce in the Phoenix, which was quite quiet actually for a Sunday afternoon because the pubs that already kind of walked past were pretty full. But I've got to say, I started on that Saltaire South Island Pale. I know, Bruce, you had that, and that was on stunning form, wasn't it?
Delicious, absolutely delicious, yeah.
And although I would say it was quiet, there was a bit of a queue at the bar when I got in there, and the guys in front of me were just ordering 5 pints of Landlord, and he just had to go and change the barrel. And when he started pouring the new barrel of Landlord, it just looked like. So I think, Bruce, you actually bought me a pint of Landlord in there. And I've got to say, it was probably the best one I've had for many a year. Bruce also dragged me into Valhalla, Nick, which was an experience. That was quite busy, actually. We ended up upstairs. Yeah. Although Bruce drank Budweiser in there, I think. Was it Budweiser or Budvar you drank in there, Bruce?
Yeah, nothing about choice for you.
Yeah. So I did actually stay with the Valhalla Pale, which is actually quite nice, actually. I've got them coming up in a minute. And then again, went to the Crystal Palace, the Sam Smith's pub on the way back towards Bruce. In fact, I've just been past. Have you ever been in the Oyster Bar in Manchester?
Oh, never been to Oyster Bar yet.
Yeah, because where we were, the Corn Exchange, it's right on the corner.
It's very big, apparently, isn't it?
Yeah, and it looks quite nice.
Actually. Sell oysters. You can buy individual oysters.
Yeah. No cask beer though at the moment. Apparently, it's all keg, but obviously very cheap prices. Obviously, with football on, it was quite busy with lots of football fans. I'm getting a cheap pint. But went to Crystal Palace. There was an Irish GAA team in there, wasn't there, Bruce? All drinking.
Really, yeah.
So again, must admit, I started on Taddy Live. It was quite warm, and I know we've had a few talks before about Old BB Bitter, but Bruce said, "Well, it's been on good form," and everybody's saying. So again, I think second round I went in and we had one. I've got to say, it was really, really nice. It was a bit like that Landlord. It was creamy. It didn't have quite that sulphur kick you sometimes get, the wood bit. So it felt very nice. So yeah, that was
maybe you were just enjoying Yorkshire beer, mate.
Maybe I got the tasting.
So going back to the Oyster Bar, when me and Jackie went in there, obviously they've got a large outdoor drinking area, haven't they?
Yeah.
And they had their bouncers, but this was during the day. They had their security guys on the actual little gate opening, and even before we got near the pub, first thing he said to me is, "Oh, it's cash only, mate, in there." I says, "Don't worry." I says, "We know all about Sam Smith." I says, "We know it's cash only." So yeah, we went in there. It's one of those. Once again, we went upstairs. You basically walk around. You can play hide and seek in there for 10, 20 minutes. It's worth going in. And then there's one Nicholson's pub next door as well.
That's right. Nicholson pub. Yeah, it's a bit lower down. Yeah.
So huge expanse covered by 2 pubs.
And we did go through the Abbydale market as well, and the little micro bar in there still doing really well, actually. Which I know me and Nick discovered a few years ago. It's a bit of a hidden gem, isn't it? You go right at the back of Abbydale Market, and there is a little micro bar there. Again, I was interested. The fishmongers were all open today. Leeds Market's not open on Sunday, is it? But the
no.
Abbydale was, and even all the fishmongers were all open with all their, because that's where the bar is. That's the only problem with it. It's a little bit fishy at times because you're just literally downwind from where all the fish stalls are. But very interesting. So a quick bit of beer news. I don't know if you've seen across this. I know we'll probably get on in a minute to kind of thinking about pubs and their potential decline with the energy costs. I know we talked about it in the last few podcasts. Just sort of throw this up. We've talked about some of these self-serve machines before. I know I think I showed you one at the racecourse, and I think this was at this might have been at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Somebody posted this. This is a Strongbow machine now, $7.50 a pint. You probably can't see it on there. One of these that you serve yourself. But there is now in Elephant and Castle in London. There's a whole self-serve bar that's just opened, the Crown and Anchor. And this looks like a normal pub, but when you go in there, the whole of the keg lineup is self-serve. So apparently you no pints, just 2/3. And there's something like 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16 beers lines that are on. And again, you take your credit card or your app, you go up, you flash your thing, and you pour yourself your own beer. So that, whether that'll be the pubs of the future, where you just self-serve yourself. So interesting, really.
Well, you're talking about $7.50 a pint. I'm afraid to say, guys, that I paid £4.70 for a pint in Malton last night.
Yeah.
Went in the stew of oyster. They've replaced the white rat with salt Tweed, which I think.
Yeah, last week, didn't we?
We were out and about, Mike. Yeah, but we didn't have it in Malton, though, did we?
No, we had it it was in the Fox. I had it in the Fox last week. It was one of the ones the one they had on there. Yeah.
I don't know how much they were charging the Fox, but as I say, when she asked me £4.70, I said, how much? I said, it's only a 4% beer. Oh, she says, but it seems to have been quite popular. So I bent her ear again about the camera discount, and she said, oh, yeah, a lot of people have been asking about it. I said, well, they need to do something about it then, because £4.70 a pint, I'm not coming in here again, no chance.
Well, you won't let this story in the Independent then, Nick, which is suggesting it's going to be £14 a pint. Well, a pub down in Somerset is saying that they've just had their bills, £72,000 energy bill, and unless you charge £14 a pint, there's no chance of survival. So again, that's the Fontmell. That pub's shutting because of that. So watch this space really. And then
this could sort of totally change the face of the country, couldn't it? Not just pubs, but things like gyms, golf clubs, all sorts of things could go under, couldn't they? Really?
Yeah.
I certainly think. I think opening hours. They've got to look at that. I think pubs won't be open 7 days a week anymore till 11, 12 o'clock at night. Yeah. I think certainly they'll be reducing their opening hours because at the end of the day, the electricity is an expense, but staff has always been one of the biggest expenses. And you've got a member of staff stood there between sort of 10, 11 o'clock on a night, and literally you've got 2 people in there, then definitely it's just not viable. Say stew and oyster last night, by the time it got to about 8:30, I think there was 5 of us left in there. And at that point, you need to be saying, right, that's it, let's cut our losses, get the staff home, turn all the power off, you save yourself 20, 30, 40 quid a night, like.
Well, in your podcast, I was reading the blog about your Sheffield trip, and like you were saying, Monday afternoon, some of those pubs, 3, 4 people. It
was amazing. It's amazing they were still open, to be honest with you. I mean, I guess some of them are kind of student, they're getting ready for students. I've got to say, my 2 locals on Friday were quite busy, but I left one, but it got too busy, which is normally quite quiet. And what they were saying was, they said, we just can't plan, you never know. They said, I've been there a couple of weeks and it's been just me and one other guy in there on a Friday at 5 o'clock. Whereas this Friday, there was about 30 people crammed in the little hot water cellar, and Mellards ticks over. Again, we mentioned Sam's already today, but I know Bruce has been keeping us updated with unfortunately, the many, many closed, especially village pubs. And it got so bad in Sheriff Hutton this week that they actually staged a vigil, all the locals outside the castle, which again is a pub we've all been in, I think. And they all got in the press. Give us our pub back, Humphrey, was the heading in the York press. And again, this pub now has been closed, I think, for 3 years now, and no signs of it reopening. And as they're saying, the longer pub sits like that, it's even harder, isn't it, to kind of reopen it? So interesting. But then on the other hand, we mentioned Valhalla. They're actually 5 years old this next week. and they're having a few little birthday things. And it is Half Moon that brew their house beers, their home beers, and they're putting on a special Valhalla Lockie, which is a double DDH IPA. I did say it is quite a strong one, that one though as well. So, as some pubs demise, others I guess see the opportunity and get in there really. Okie dokie. So let's crack on with Sheffield then. So unfortunately, Bruce will have to kind of be a little bit of a passenger here and ask us a few questions. And although again, I think there are quite a few of these pubs.
Just before you start, you're talking about different beers. I've got a different one here. It's called Crywolf Black IPA, and it's made by Black Sheep. My colleagues bought this at work for me for my birthday. Never seen it before. Yeah, it's interesting. Certainly got the smell of an IPA. If you close your eyes and don't look at the colour of it, it has got definitely is IPA, but obviously it's got that little bit of roasted malt flavour to it. But I say I've never seen that one before, and I know they're also, I think they're blowing one exclusive now for, is it Mitchell and Butler pubs called Twilighter, or is it Green King? One of the big chains anyway. It seems that they're brewing for those, so it seems that some of the breweries are still expanding. So yeah. Crywolf Black IPA.
Yeah, well, Black IPA is kind of the new mild. It's kind of a weird concoction. It was interesting. I've been listening to some of the podcasts that were done at the Peak Ender, the Thornbridge, their weekend, and the beer nomination did a few podcasts with brewers, and they're all slagging it off, saying it's a bit of a kind of a combine night. What does it actually mean? What is a black IPA?
Well, this is a 5%, so it's got the strength of an IPA. But obviously the colour in it with rusted malt.
Yeah, and probably some adjunct as well. So
speaking about new breweries, my neighbour also got me this. I was going to have a bottle. He got me a box of Shadow Bridge brewery beers, which apparently is so named because of the shadow of the Humber Bridge. So I've never heard of it until he brought me. Have you heard of them?
Nope. You want for me?
Which side, Bruce? South Bank or North Bank?
To the side, I believe. He goes to Snaith every morning, yeah. So I've got a bottle of Battle Stand and a bottle of Dragon Slam.
Starting on Humber side.
Fub, yes. I've got a red ale, a golden ale, and a session ale, so I shall see what they're like, yes. Before we press on, I should mention as well, actually, on Friday night, I happened to go to the Ainsty Brewery tap for the first ever time. Out at Acaster Mulberry, New York. It's been about 5 or 6 years. It's one of those things, we'll do it, never get round to it. So we'll do it this Friday. Absolutely brilliant. It's sandwiched on the edge of the village between a 90-acre field and 60-acre field. It really is just a brewery on a farm, is the Ainsty Brewery. But what a fantastic atmosphere. And we talk about tap rooms. They never really proper tap, but this really is. The tables are nestled amongst the bloody brewing tanks. They've got a makeshift bar. They've got loads of bales outside. They had a pin man doing pizzas there. Absolutely fantastic. People bring on baskets of apples to take along home if you wanted.
Is it a farm building then, Bruce, or is it a metal shed?
Well, it's a metal shed, original farm
industrial shed. All right. Yeah.
But it's absolutely brilliant. All the beers, I have to say, were stunning. I was on the pale ale, $3.75 a pint. It was fantastic, but very well frequented. It's only open though Friday 4 till 9.
Yeah, that's the problem. They're only open on the weekends.
But absolutely. Great endeavour they've got going up there, and say the beer was stunning too. So definitely worth a trip for in York, the Ainsty Brewery tap.
Yeah, I mean there was a few breweries. I think there's over 57 breweries now in Sheffield, and I think we tried to look at some of the taps in Sheffield where we went, but again, same thing really. They're only open Friday, Saturday, which you can understand, because they're brewing in the week, and as we said, really. So Sheffield is going to be the focus of episode 41. I mean, we managed to get to about, I think, 11, 12 pubs, and we didn't really touch service, and it did really, because we walked past probably equally as many pubs we walked past on our, and we mainly did kind of a southwest, slightly south of the city centre, and then we just put our toes into Kelham with a trip to the Shaky. So I mean, we didn't even get into Kelham Island, so all the great pubs are out there. So I think that was kind of part of the challenge. So as I mentioned in episode 14, Nick and Bruce, you came up with a virtual pub crawl, which you went through the Sheffield Tap, the Frog and Parrot, the Old Queen's Head, the 3 Tons. They're all kind of around the station, aren't they? The Fat Cat, the Dog and Partridge, the Head of Steam, the Kelham Island Tavern, the Brown Bear, the Shakespeare, and the Grapes. So those were your choices. And then we had listeners back then, and I sent out a couple of tweets, and we had some listeners' choices. And the good listeners, they came up with the Rutland Arms, the Bath Hotel, the Harlequin, the Red Deer, and the Bar Stewards were all recommendations. So again, if you're on YouTube, what I've done is I've put the pubs that we actually went to on the right-hand side. And so we went to the Sheffield Tap, so that was a match. Went to the Benjamin Huntsman. I first mentioned Weatherspoons this evening, which was not on the initial crawl. The Fulwood Ale Club, which was definitely not on that I don't think was probably open when we did that episode back in May 21. The Rising Sun, which is the Abbydale pub, their tap pub. The Itchy Pig Ale House, the York, the Bath Hotel, which again was a listener's choice. Industry Tap, which again is fairly new. I don't think it would have been open when we did that virtual. Rutland Arms, which again was one of the other listener suggestions. The Banker's Draft, the second Weatherspoons.
Why the Banker's Draft? People avoid like the plague in Sheffield.
That's why we went in.
Yeah, it was actually. But actually, Bruce, we were quietly. I wasn't impressed, but it was anyway. The Shakespeare, which was on the left, and the Grapes, where we ended up. So interesting that it's like a real tour, and picked up some of those. So. Again, just doing some background reading on this, there's been quite a lot of, obviously Sheffield was a fairly big brewing centre back in the 70s, 80s. It had 4 national breweries, Whitbread, Stones, Anchor, another one which gets off my head, Wards, there we go, Wards. They all closed down. They all pretty much shut down by the end of the 80s. And then we mentioned before the Fat Cat. I've got a story that I'll share with the Fat Cat. And the Guardian suggested that it's now the beer capital of Britain. Not even Manchester, they say, comes near, because Sheffield now has 3.5 times as many breweries per capita as Greater London, and 57 breweries now kind of operate within the city limits. 31 which have opened in the last 5 years. So it's certainly a bit of a beery capital. I think every pub we went into, Nick, would probably go back in. Maybe the York was maybe one that possibly wouldn't. I don't know. I didn't go into all of them.
Didn't like York. I didn't like the Industry Tap. It wasn't a pub, and the beer choice was crafty. So yeah.
And I as I mentioned, I don't know mention Bruce, but the local camera do a fantastic, again as always, magazine, the newsletter called Beer Matters. So, and it's all available to download, and it's a really good read actually. It's one of those and that's really good. And Nick picked up again Sheffield Heritage Pubs as well, which again there's a whole book on it. There's some great pubs, but the Beer Matters magazine is really, really good. It's one of those regional branch that it's really good reading. Lots of interesting articles in there. And I was looking there; they did a 500 edition recently, and it was saying that when they were set up in 1974. There were only 3 pubs in the whole of Sheffield that had any hand pumps in them. And one of those was a Shakespeare, who only used them for emergency use. And so, in 74, Sheffield beer was pretty much keg virtually only. And that was it. And what they were now saying is, on an average day in Sheffield, there are normally 400 cask beers on across the city. And I think they were, weren't they? Most of those pubs we went into had with the exception of Lost Industry, but the rest of them had fantastic range of cask on as well. And again, I just thought it's interesting. Roger Protz, he wrote the intro to the 500th edition, and he talked a lot about Dave Wickett. We've mentioned on the podcast in the past, who was the founder of Kellam Island Brewery. Unfortunately, passed away, I think, about a year ago, wasn't it, in lockdown, just after lockdown. And obviously the brewery now, unfortunately, ceased brewing as well. But again, he told this story that when he opened the Fat Cat initially, I know, Nick, you talked a lot about this back in episode 14, he was really struggling to get any beer and to kind of get it set up. So apparently he gave Wards a ring, which was only just down the road. And the head brewer came in and basically said, what do you want to do cask for? Cask's dead. Get rid of cask, So in desperation, apparently, he rang Timothy Taylor's and said, right, will you sell me some cask beer? And they said, you're too far out, really. We can't deliver to Sheffield, although it's in Yorkshire, it's far too far. So in the end, by all accounts, he drove all the way to Keighley. Well, not all the way, but he drove to Keighley. He picked up 2 cask barrels of Landlord. He brought them back, opened that weekend. He rang the brewery again on Monday morning, and they said, oh, hello. Well, we thought we might hear from you. Do you want to take our cask back? He goes, no, I've sold those 2 casks. I need some more. And he claims that that was one of the things that made landlords become more of a regional and national brewery because of the success of the Fat Cat. So, you know, a nice little tale, whatever, really. So Sheffield, as I mentioned, was home to Stones. So part of the little thing that we had in there was trying to find the Stones. Certainly for our childhood, Nick, that orange can and that orange font, the Stones best bitter in most of our local clubs. And apparently Stones was even in the end of the 80s was apparently the biggest drank beer in the UK.
It was always slightly stronger as well.
Yeah,
I mean, as you'll remember, my student digs in Sheffield, the whole of the chimney breast in the living room was just full of cans of Stones, empty cans of Stones. But I think we used to buy it because it was about 4.1, 4.2 in the can as well, which compared to the other can bitter at that time, it was slightly stronger, and obviously it was local.
And then it's again interesting. What they did was, I think Bass Charrington bought them out, and they dropped to 3.9. But it was interesting because it rang a few bells with me when we did Tadcaster. By all accounts, this bright beer, this strong bitter, was brewed initially for steel workers who were beginning to come off the porter. And we talked about the kind of stouts and porters, which were the most popular beers in the kind of late 1800s. And this was the new kind of beer, hoppy, quite strong, but more refreshing. And kind of that's where it kind of came along. So, and as I said, it has been revitalized, and we did manage to get a pint of Stones as well on the way. So,
I recall seeing the Stones on a hand pump. Did you, Nick, when you were a student? Was always on keg if ever I saw it.
I think at that point, it was available on hand pump, not as much. I think what happened, Bruce, was the Bass Charrington wanted to push it as keg because that's kind of what was happening. You know, keg was king. And they really pushed, and then decided that actually Worthington E was going to be their key keg, and that's why basically Stones was killed off in the 90s because they wanted to make Worthington E their premium keg beer. So that's kind of where it was. So we mentioned this particular bar a number of times. It was in Your Choice in episode 14. It's a great place to meet people. So on platform 1, although me and Nick still can't work out how you get to platform 1 from Sheffield Station, because it seems to show you over the top, doesn't it, Nick? So you must be way getting in there. And Sheffield Station is very nice and it's very plush on the outside. It's still a bit kind of traditional Victorian station inside. But on platform 1B is the Sheffield Tap. And this was one of the early ones, wasn't it, that they did? Again, long story. By all accounts, these guys, the Piva Bar guys, were on the roof for some reason of Sheffield Station a number of years ago and looked down and saw the first class refreshment rooms and said, what's going on there? I said, oh, nothing, it's a dump. And they took them over and opened it up, won multiple prizes, opened a brewery about 3 or 4 years ago in what was the old dining room. And what a very fine place it is. I wrote in the blog, I just felt, and I know that you didn't quite say this, I think because I've been spoilt by Harrogate Tap, which is very nice and a bit newer. It just felt to me a bit tired. I just felt that the paintwork and the doors were a bit scuffed, and I don't know, it just lost a little bit of its kind of sparkle.
Yeah, but once again, you couldn't understand why a spot that size.
But you mentioned the footfall, which must be phenomenal.
And to go in and refurbish that, you're looking at tens of thousands of pounds. So in the modern climate, it's that sort of pub where people really aren't going to sit and spend the full day. So the passing trade through. I don't mind that it's not as plush and comfortable as some of the other places.
In fact, I think the Harrogate Tap is sometimes a bit too sparkly clean. Verging on the clinical, tap thing. I quite like it.
But once again, different clientele. You get very few people going the Harrogate Tap who are either getting on a train or getting off a train. I think it's more discerning clientele in town who know you go there for a real ale. Whereas I think the Sheffield Tap certainly is a lot of passing trade coming and going. And I mean, last time, not when I was there with you, Mike, but the time before, me and Jackie tried a green, and it was just absolutely rammed with football fans.
Yeah, you said that.
And I can't remember whether it was Sheffield United fans waiting to catch a train to go out the city, or it was away fans who basically landed and the police were corralling them there, giving them a beer, and then saying, right, we're going to march you en masse down to Bramall Lane. So, when you've got that sort of clientele going in there, nothing against football fans, but certainly, when they've had a few beers on the train coming up, then, you're not going to present with the finest fixtures and fittings because, things do get knocked and banged and damaged with people spilling beer and stuff like that. So
and for Mundy lunchtime, there were 10 cask beers available, quite a nice range, really. Although again, looking at the prices, it was £4 to £6.50 for a pint of cask. So yeah, 2010 it was opened, and I mentioned that more recently they've opened their brewery, their on-site brewery, and I think they had 2 of their beers on. I think the Scoresby Stout is their permanent beer, which they have on, and then I had a New Haven, which is kind of one of their kind of slightly hazy IPA, which was okay. Actually, I started on a Durham. I'd actually me and Nick were kind of just checking where trains. It's one of those days when trains were a little bit dodgy, and I just looked on the Untapped and saw that they had a beer called Soft Mick on. So I said, and that's the one I'm going to start on. But unfortunately, when I got there, the barman said, "Oh, well, that went last night. It went pretty quick." And I said to him, "What do you suggest?" And then he said, "Oh, well, go for the Durham. Everybody's drinking the Durham Macos, which was very nice, actually." And then Nick, I'm just trying to see what you had in there. You had a because you were
looking for my phone because listed him on
I've got it here somewhere. You had a Patchwork Rocket.
Oh, that's right.
Cornwall, an American ale, which is quite interesting as well. What was quite nice, Bruce, as we were sat there, you just see them on the picture there. Actually, if I move our faces over here, those 3 geese, the old guys in the middle there, they again all came separately, got off different trains, and obviously we're meeting up for a little bit of their own little beer session. Oh, nice. I've got to say, Nick, while we drunk our one and a half pint, I had 1.5, you had 1. They were onto their 3rd pint by the time.
Killing it, them lads.
Yeah. I mean, they must have been in their 80s, weren't they, Nick? I mean, they were quite sprightly.
They're probably all ex-railway workers. They get the train travel for now.
So we kind of met about 12 o'clock midday. So we were stopping the Travel Lodge, which is just literally down the road from the station. So
very handy.
Check-in. So we thought we'll drop our bags off, and then we've got a little bit easier to move around a little bit. So obviously we thought, well, we need to kind of get ourselves sorted out with a bit of sustenance, a bit of beer soaking. So our first stop actually is our preferred Weatherspoons in Sheffield, which is the Benjamin Huntsman, which again is, I don't know, it's a bit weird, Sheffield. Sheffield's got lots of Weatherspoons, and in fact there are 2 now literally across the road from one another, because the other one is the Waterworks, which is the old city Waterworks. Now, Nick, that was a Lloyd's bar, wasn't it? But it's now been rebadged as a Weatherspoons. But I've got to say, the Benjamin Huntsman is quite a nice. It's always okay, actually. Normally, good range of beer on. It's a bit kind of, as you see in the picture there, industrial and quirky inside. But Monday, so again, the 4 old ladies sat opposite us. It was probably about a quarter full. They obviously come for a coffee and a chat, and then they started doing whiskey shots. So one of them would go up to the bar and come back with whiskey shots. Now, by now, it's about 1 o'clock on a Monday afternoon.
Well, 12:30, quarter to 1.
And these women are doing whiskey shots at 12:30 on a Monday afternoon. And, they weren't like, they weren't bag ladies. They were, they'd obviously come in from the suburbs, and they had, done a bit of shopping. And there they were, down in whiskey shots at 12:30. So anyway, an all-day buffet. The beer was, as always, in Weatherspoons, I think.
All-day brunch, not buffet, man.
Oh, sorry, all-day brunch, sorry. So I had an Acorn Gold, which was okay. And Nick, you had a Bradfield. Well, you went for a Farmers, but I think you got Brown Cow at the end, didn't we?
Last behind bag, get me wrong one.
Young staff behind the bar. The beer was all right. I don't know. Never just sparkles in a Weatherspoons. It's dead. Maybe that's what it is.
I was actually talking to someone on Friday night. I don't repeat what he said because it'd sue me, but he had a theory. He had a theory about why the beer in Weatherspoons is all. It's dull, isn't it? It lacks life.
Yeah.
I mean, I was at Harrogate one a few weeks ago. Huge choice of beers on. I think Jaipur for like $2.29. Mad up to it, but as soon as they pull it, it's dead.
It's dead, yeah. Loses its head straight away.
Yeah. But I did hear a theory that I wouldn't repeat on here, but I had a theory. It did make a lot of sense, actually. But
I it's all Bruce. It's because they don't have proper sales, so
yeah. It's not been
the slack hackler, and it's down to the staff behind the bar. People are very, I would say, working with Weatherspoons. I've never worked behind a bar in their life. To pull this with Barclay. It's
is that Nicholas who's going, or is it my end? It's Nicholas, right? I think we got some of that, Nick. You went a bit Dalek-y there. Now, I was in charge of the first half of the day. So again, being me, I kind of got a few little different things to do. Rather than just do the traditional Abbydale Road or the Kelham Island trip, I thought we'd do something a bit different. So I planned to send us out to Fulwood, which is kind of, I guess, slightly posher suburb of kind of South Sheffield. It's not far from the university land, but it's a little bit further out. So we shut off down, again, being the South, the Yorkshire Republic, Sheffield is, the public transport is stupidly cheap. So again, the buses were very regular. So we headed down to the moor, and we had about 50-minute wait, didn't we? So we popped into the Moor Market and Beer Central, which is a fantastic little beer shop that's in there. Sean runs it. Sean is a regular on the Sheffield Hopcast. So we had a quick chat with Sean, asking where he would recommend, and his recommendation was the Rutland Arms. And then that's where Nick picked up that Sheffield Heritage book, which again was a quite.
Yeah, well, we couldn't support him by buying bottles of beer because we knew we were going to be out all day and we didn't want to clanking bottles of beer about. So I went for the Sheffield Real Heritage pubs, which I think Sean had an involvement in. And it's like one of those Yorkshire Heritage books, so it's a stick, but it is purely about the Sheffield pubs. And I promised to give it to Mike for one of his birthday presents, but I've still got it at the moment. And it's a cracking book. I think it was $6.95. So once again, if you don't want to buy any beer from the shop in the Castle Market, recommend at least buying a book. Sean's got plenty of them on the counter there because I say he has been involved in putting it together. And it's a cracking read of the history of pubs. Also explains why Sheffield really hasn't got what you call some, Victorian gin palaces, tremendous pubs. Because they reckon with the breweries that were involved in Sheffield, there wasn't actually that much competition. So they reckon compared to a lot of the towns and cities where you had these magnificent palaces for drinking that were basically put together in Victorian times because of the competition that was on, there wasn't as much that going on in Sheffield because of the number of breweries that were there. But anyway, the history is in the front of it, and then it goes to all the pubs in the area on the outskirts. So yeah, cracking book, and also, good on the sponsors, the people who sponsored, including a couple of the individual pubs and a couple of the breweries as well.
What's the pub on the cover there? What's the pub on the cover?
That is the Fat Cat.
Yeah.
That's corridor of the Fat Cat there.
Yeah, that's the corridor. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, funny. How far I've been the Fat Cat, but recognise it as that. Yeah, that's good.
No, but you don't. It's because you don't like from the corridor, though, do you?
Yeah, you kind of go in and turn right. Yeah. And there's also printed beer matters as well at the Beer Central. And again, normally there was a couple of months' worth back there as well. So yeah, we headed up to Fulwood. It's maybe about 20 minutes on the bus, and it's a nice little suburb. There's a little kind of shopping arcade. There is a quite nice co-op, and across the road is the Fulwood Ale Club. So there's two of these. There's one actually in Ecclesall, the Ecclesall Ale Club. These are Brew Foundation, who are a cuckoo brewery. In fact, they're currently brewing out of Winkle near me in the Staffordshire Moorlands, Cheshire border. And this was a former butcher's shop. So if you look carefully, there are a few little hooks and things hanging up on the wall. And this, again, one of those kind of new micro bars, wasn't it, Nick? It was quite pleasant. It was quite quiet. As you see there, they managed to get quite a bit of nice seating area out the front there. And it was quite nice by 1:30 on Monday afternoon. So we sat out there. And I've got to say the beer was all right, actually, wasn't it? It was, again, I had a shiny beer, a shiny brewery beer from Little Eaton near Nottingham. And you went for the Oxford Pale, and they were both very agreeable pints. And
I seem to remember yours as one of those cloudy ones.
A bit more hazy, yeah.
The other bloke in the pub, he'd reckon he was on his fourth or fifth. He was a landlord from the sports bar, and he reckoned he was on his fifth. Recommended it, but I had a look at it and thought, no, it's too cloudy for me. I'll go on what I know, which was me Hawkshead Pale, which was nice steady on one.
I think worth a trip out there. So it was a nice place. Nice young lady behind the bar. Again, there was probably about 4 different beers on cask. Obviously, quite a range, and then was quite a few keg beers, and it also as a bottle shop as well. Inside, it was kind of rusticy seating kind of thing, a bit like the outside of it, really. So not very big. Probably, if there was 20 in there, it's quite busy inside. So very nice. So that kicked us off quite nicely. So that was beer number 3. We'd take to walk then. So we walked back down the hill, and the Rising Sun, which again is a cracking pub. So as mentioned, Abbydale don't have a brewery tap. So instead they have this pub, which is probably a couple of miles from the actual brewery, but it's the one pub that they own. So not surprisingly, I mean, there literally was 100 hand pumps on that gleaming bar there. Not all Abbydale, but the majority of them were Abbydale. Again, lovely big pub. It's recently won quite a lot of awards. I think it's one of the Sheffield pubs of the year.
Typical one of those estate pubs.
Yeah. Unfortunately, again, it was very, very quiet. I think there was probably only one other bloke in when we were there, and maybe a couple as well. Lots of
lads behind the bar.
Yeah, lots of areas seating. So, as you said, we picked the Cyril chairs, which are in the main bar there as well. Some very interesting toilets. So quite unique in that they've used beer kegs for the urinals, and quite a nice little kind of, well, I guess the pump clips, aren't they, as you walk out there as well.
Right,
so
right.
I quickly checked what I hadn't drank for a while from Abbydale. So amazingly, it was moonshine. That was my missing tick. So I went for a pint of moonshine. And Nick, you had a daily bread, which is one of the kind of more recent, a straight up kind of best bitter, wasn't it? Those were $3.90 a pint, which again we thought was quite good value. And we probably could have stayed there and had a few more beers, but worth going to. I think I wrote here, it felt a bit like a carvery. I think it was so big and it was so empty. That's kind of the issue, really.
And they obviously do a lot of food because the condiments dresser Bruce, it had a shelf full of Hendersons Relish bottles.
Yeah. So it was now fairly tipping it down, and we were in Sheffield. So we jumped back on the bus, which is very handy because it was literally outside the pub, which was quite good. And just probably about 5 minutes down the hill, a bit closer to the town centre, jumped out. And our next two pubs, again, were literally across the road from one another. So this was a new one, I think new one for Unique as well, the Itchy Pig Ale House, which again is another former kind of retail shop. And those on the pictures, you can see it there on the right. And actually, this was quite nice, wasn't it? Quite a nice little micro bar, quite neat inside. Pennies on the bar, malt sacks hanging on the wall. It was a little bit fuller. There was at least 2 or 3 other people in here. I think with 2 of the couples and maybe more than that. Again, it was probably because it was Mundy. They only had 3 casks on, and I think 2 of those were Thornbridge. 4 of those were Thornbridge. Some very, and not surprising, some very nice pot scratchings as the Itchy Pig.
Wow.
So I'm just trying to see what
excellent, Bruce. They were excellent.
You
had
an
AM PM Thornbridge.
And I went for the only other guest one, which is there the top, nice. The Carnival Brewing Carmen, which again was a fruity mosaic, but it was quite hazy. So I think that's what the barman said. It's hazy. So Nick went for the AM/PM. But they were nice pints, and again, I'm trying to see how much they were. They're on the board there. Are they price? Oh yeah, $4.40 a pint. So again, slightly up. And then across the road is the York, and the York is one of the True North pubs. They have quite a few of these similar kind of pubs actually across Sheffield. Again, we felt this was very studenty focused, and that's why it was quite quiet. Although very nice inside. Again, quite a big pub. Lots of nice little touches, like
very
fresh flowers.
Smart inside.
Yeah,
yes,
fresh flowers on every table. And I've put the beer menu up there. And, there was quite a range really. They had Bradfield Farmers on. They had a couple of Thornbridge. They had a salt beer on. They had Frome Brewing. Interesting mix really. But we'd gone there for one thing, and the one thing was the Stones. So whilst they're a True North pub, it's one of the pubs that sell Stones Best Bitter. And so that's what we both had. It's back to its 4.1 original gravity. As mentioned, it did get shoved down to 3.9. Quite an eclectic music in here, 90s alternative music, which I think was probably again, as with the other people in the pub, it was the bar staff's choice, really. And again, Nick, a bit indescript. It's hard to remember really what Stones tasted like, isn't it, really?
No, I remember what Stones tasted. It didn't taste like the Stones I remember, but at £3 a pint, you can't knock it. It was,
and that was our
really
cheapest pint, wasn't it? Yeah.
£3 a pint. Yeah.
It looks all right.
Yeah,
it was quite. Yeah, again, I think what happened, Bruce, it did die quite a bit. It came out of the pint. The first pull was really nice. It went a bit flat, I've got to say, pretty quickly. So again, whether that was maybe wasn't quite pulled as tight as it could have been, who knows, really. So we're now kind of on the edge of the city centre. So we kind of wandered in. Our next direction was towards the Bath Hotel. But as you hit the edge of the city centre, there is one of Sheffield's icons, although it's looking a bit sad at the moment.
I need to know what's happened to that, Mike. Yeah.
Well, I think it's as you thought, Nick. The actual Hendersons Relish factory now it's moved out onto an industrial estate. This is the original factory, which is kind of nothing more than almost a terraced house, isn't it? And it's part of the University of Sheffield kind of approach. So apparently it's owned by them now, and they are doing it up. So they are going to keep it. They're going to retain it. It's going to be beautified. It's a bit sad looking with the cordings around it and barbed wire. But anyway, so hopefully they'll be back on it as well. And we were heading to the Bath Hotel. So this was new for me. Something that the kind of listeners had suggested back in episode 14, across from the town baths, city baths. And it was quite nice, Nick, wasn't it? It was like a bit of an Art Deco kind of pub, wasn't it, inside?
One of the Sheffield Rail Heritage pubs.
Yeah.
It basically states that this is the most complete example of a 1930s pub. And it originally started out as basically a small pub in a row of terraces. And as some of the big breweries bought it, they expanded it. But from the 1930s onwards, it hasn't been touched. Yeah, and therefore the interior is as near to a 19 interwar pub as you will find anywhere in Sheffield.
It's run by Thornbridge now, so again, that's why there were a few of their beers on the bar. But again, it was quite.
But how is it though? Because Thornbridge are giving a lot of the pubs back out there.
As far as I read at the moment, I think it is. We'll check that, but it says it is. Right. Again, quite nice. It's got a little servery we went in the big kind of, I guess, the lounge room at the back, which had this lovely oval window, sunlight coming in, and it's a little servery there as well.
Absolutely.
It was very nice. So I think, Nick, I'm trying to think what you went for. I can't see what beers we had in here now.
No, see if I grab my phone, I'll be able to.
We had mainly Acorn and Abbydale actually on the bar. And I don't know what I've put down here. Anyway, but definitely worth a visit. Again, it was fairly quiet. It got a bit busy as we were leaving. So we then headed into the city centre and we skipped by the Frog and Parrot, which again, you talked quite a lot about in episode 14. The Frog and Parrot was an infamous Sheffield pub because it had an on-site brewery which brewed a very strong beer.
Roger and Out, which was you only got in thirds, and if you drank 3 of them, then you got a certificate. And I was reading, apparently a lot of the cricketers used to pop in here. Obviously, the cricket ground's not a million miles from here, and it was one of the things that apparently the cricketers would all go and try and drink a pint of this stuff. It's a Green King pub now, which is fine, but a lovely mural on the side. So we decided not to go. And they don't. I think there was talk about redoing the Roger now, and there is now a brewery in Sheffield called the Dead Parrot, and they were going to do something. From what I can gather, they haven't redone that. So we walked past that, and you kind of into then a little bit of an area of Sheffield that's going through a lot of kind of refurb, really, lots of building sites, lots of kind of flattened ex-buildings, and we were actually heading to the Rutland Arms. But on the way there, there was a couple of taps down here that I'd kind of pre-looked at. In fact, we didn't go to the True North one, which is only about another 2 minutes. And we ended up having a look at the Industry Tap, which is a very new building, kind of on a corner. So we popped in. Again, the weather was a bit inclement, so we went in there. As you can see from Nick's face, it wasn't really his choice. There was no cask on. It was all keg, and it was all the kind of hazy tropical stuff. And in thirds and 2/3, because they've advertised the price of the pints in there, you were looking at 7, 8, 9, 10 quid.
Well, we did laugh, didn't we? That there was a table beer on that was 2.8%. We worked out that would have been £5.10 a pint for a 2.8% beer. So I think we just had a half in there, and it was interesting. It was a.
Mr. Smith sells his 2.8% dark mild for £2.29 a pint now.
Yeah, so that puts it in there. And then we headed to what I probably would say was the pub of the day for me, and that was the Rutland Arms. Again, it doesn't look it's probably kind of pub if you're passing it. You'd probably say, not sure about that. Looks a bit rough in there. And even Frank Sidebottom is trying to escape from one of the windows upstairs. But again, this is a traditional old boozer, lovely old Duncan Gilmore and Co. Limited. That's one of the old breweries in Sheffield up there as well. But this was just a proper beer drinkers pub that probably hasn't changed for the last 30 or 40 years. Sticky carpets. It was rammed. It was the busiest pub we went in all day.
Quite bohemian.
Very bohemian, even with a head sticking out of the bar, as you'd see there, those on YouTube. A beard behind the bar, but that was fine. Again, pretty full. I put that they were all Human League lookalike. They were
busiest pub that we went in.
The busiest pub, yeah. Now they do a lot of.
That was at
tea time, wasn't it? Now
That was 7 minutes to 4 minutes to 7. I got us in the Rutland House. So I suppose 7 o'clock. Yeah, and I had a pint of Bluebee Hillfoot Best Bitter.
So Bluebee are again a local brewery. They're based in Neep's End, and I think they do quite a lot of beers in the pub here. So I think I had the same. I had one of those as well, and did notice that they had that double mild on there. That was from Red Willow in Cheshire, and that was 9.1% mild, and that was £6.10 a pint on there as well. So yeah, great pub, very busy, buzzing. Probably could have stayed in there longer, but we were kind of on a bit of a mission by now. So I think we're on beer 9, Nick, by now. So we were kind of in good form. So we headed back quickly to the Travel Lodge, just checked in there, just had half an hour, quick freshen up. And then we headed to the Brewster, the pub that Brewster already mentioned, the Banker's Draft, which is kind of the Weatherspoons, which is in the centre of Sheffield. And it's infamous because it's a bit rough, but also it's apparently got the worst Weatherspoons food in the north. So we thought, well, we've got to go there. So we were ready for some tea. But actually, if you look at the beer offer on that Mundy, it wasn't too bad actually. Redcastle Red Lady, which was £2.19. Rudgart Ruby Mild, Sloppy and Golden Thread, Figs and Old Peculiar, Witchwood Hobgoblin, and a Milestone Summer Breeze. So 6 cask beers on a Monday night on those prices wasn't bad as well. Obviously, by now I was on beer 10, so I did Nicholas's trick and ordered me Elvis juice with me tea because I feel a bit macho and bravo, and thought 6% beer would go down very well as well.
What possessed you to go for dinner at Weatherspoons?
to see what it was like. I'm going to say
Bruce, we still had pubs to go to. Weatherspoons, you're going to be 10 minutes. Yeah. You're going to be fed. You're going to get a drink for a tenner, and then within half an hour, you're back on the mission again. You know yourself that when we go on these beer trips, food isn't important, but when you're on an all-day session, you need to get something substantial down here. So, dodging in and out of pie and cake shops, it's probably a lot more healthier to go and sit down in Weatherspoons and have what we had to have. So that was the reason being.
The Merry England Cafe in Huddersfield. I think that was your choice, Bruce, initially. So anyway, Nick, you went for the Redcastle Red Lady, which was okay. The pub was fairly busy.
And a 10-ounce gammon.
In the Benjamin Huntsman, we actually got the food before we got the beers. That wasn't quite the case in the Banker's Draft. And I went for a mixed grill, which came out in stages because every time he brought something, he realised there was something else missing. So anyway, but it was edible, and we made it through there. So by now we're kind of hitting that bit where it's getting a bit dark now. Nick, it was getting a bit. It was raining, so we thought, well, come on, we've got to start cutting our losses.
Bit moist.
So we thought we'd head off. We thought we'd got to go to Shakespeare. So we set
off. That was about 9:15 when we came out the Spoons. So I got us getting in there. See, Bruce, we got in the Spoons at 8:10, and we were in the Shakespeare at 9:10.
That's good, isn't
it? Bad doing. Yeah.
That's travel time walking, and also it's eating and having a beer.
So the Shakespeare is, if you like, the gateway to Kelham Island, really. It's one of the first pubs that you'll pass as you're kind of just coming out of the city centre. It's a pub that we've been to quite a lot. Nick, you probably went here a lot. In fact, you were cracking about student days when Judy walked in there, because even in the summer term, there was quite a few students in there. Again, it's a proper old pub, a whole range of different people in there, different room. We managed to sit under that lovely Ward's window on the right-hand side as you go in. I put the beer board up there. There was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 beers on, 2 of their own, what they call house cask beers that are brewed by Abbydale. Well, that's Abbydale Deception. I'm not quite sure that's house cask. And Red Willow Fecklers, so that they're on all the time. We did think, Bruce, that bar looks a bit like Sotheby's bar, doesn't it? With the kind of the whatever it's called, the marquee setting and the fake teak or whatever.
Absolutely,
And it was pretty much, it was tipping over for a Monday night. As you see, their prices were not cheap. 3-4, not bad as well.
320,
yeah. So not too bad, really.
And the bigger room's actually around the back, Mike. We obviously sat in the front bar, but the bigger room is down the side and around the back.
So I'm just checking in what we had in there. I don't know if we could taste beer by this point, because this is beer 11 when we got in there.
I had a I had a Red Willow Feckless.
Oh, that's right. You had the Feckless, and I had the Nomadic Bandit Pale, 4.8%. But cracking pub, and I think it was buzzing on a Monday night. Great range of beers, so definitely worth a visit. If you've only gone to a couple of pubs in Sheffield, I think the Shakespeare probably would be a must go to, really, especially if you like your beer. So by now we're kind of getting towards the end, and you guys talked about this pub quite a lot in episode 14. So we thought we'd end up, and Nick, you'd already worked this out, that it was Monday night, and Monday night back in your student days, you'd go in there because it's Irish singing night, although by all accounts, they're singing every night in this pub, apart from Wednesday.
Six nights a week, yeah.
6 nights a week. So we went into the great...
obviously, a wet Monday night in Sheffield, it was a case of like, where else can we go now? And so I knew something would be happening. The Grapes, or as it's more commonly known, Flynn's, after the family that have run it. So that's where we headed to, and it's convenient. You just walk up from the edge of Kelham Island, you walk back up to Trippett Lane, and then you'll come across the Grapes.
So again, another nice mural on the side of this pub, another Guinness toucan with his beers on top. So went in, and of course we could all really have one drink in here. They did have 2 hand pumps on. Actually, had an Abbydale, and they also had a Stancil Barnsley bitter on as well, which one people were drinking. We went for the Guinness. Again, it was one of those where it was well poured by an Irish barman. Left us settle for quite a while, and as you can see there from the look of it, it was very, very good indeed. We ended up sitting in a little corridor bit with the music room just behind Nick there, and all was very good. And in fact, I can probably give you a slight... I don't know if it's going to work. Is it going to work? Maybe not.
They say if you want the music, then you sit in the front right on room. Yeah. If you want to talk but also listen to music, you sit in the corridor. If you don't want to listen to music, then you sit in one of the back rooms. One of the rooms is dedicated to... what's his face? The American Catholic president who was shot.
Kennedy.
Kennedy. And the nice thing about the corridor, it's one of those tiled corridors. So architecturally, in terms of traditional pub interior, it's as nice sitting in the corridor anyway. It's a very wide corridor, carpeted corridor, but I say it's got the tiles on the walls there.
And as you can see from that picture there, if you're on YouTube, they were very fine pint. That was our second pint of Guinness in there, and it was Bruce. It was a really, I think you said it was a really good pint that you remember in there as well. It was, you could put your penny on top of that one. So that was beer 13 for me, and I think beer 14 for Nick. So for us to be fairly coherent by then,
you'd had a 660 milliliter bottle of Elvis juice in Weatherspoons, so we were about even.
We're about even, and that was, I did really a very, very good night, really. So we kind of staggered back to Travelodge. We'd had some thoughts about maybe having a few beers the day after, but in the end, we went for breakfast down in the Quays, which was quite nice, and then decided that with trains being as they were, probably if there were trains available, jump on them and head back home. So we did. But all in all, a cracking session in Sheffield. So definitely worth a visit. I said we only touched the skin, really. 12 pubs out of...
If we went back there tomorrow, we could do another 12 pubs, easy, not repeat any of them, and not repeat any of the beers that we'd had either. So
no, it was really good. And I'd say there was a cracking choice of beers. With it, well, I know you said you'd go back to New York. We'd go back in every one of those pubs again and recommend them. So, so really, really good. So that was kind of where we are. So that's this week's episode, kind of ready to go up in the can or whatever. The next one we're going to have a look at. Part of the reason why I was in York with Bruce was looking for some lost breweries of York. So I put some of those together. As well as a couple of beers that we mentioned there. And I know we've done York a few times, but we will. And then, guys, I think we've got to do a Malton one at some point. So we might need to, let's maybe that's our next couple. So episode 42 we'll do in a couple of weeks' time, which will be Hunting Lost Brews of York. And then we will put together probably for where we're up to now, probably October, we will do a Malton one because I think we all need to do that. So we might need to kind of again think of a way of doing that, whether we do our kind of pubs past and present, and we pick a couple each, and then just talk about a current two.
Neil Sotheby on as a special guest.
Yeah. And we had his picture on last time, which is probably enough for most people. And again, we might be what's left open, Nick, by the time we next do this in October. But hopefully, I mean, it's not bad now, is it?
We can go and see the Russian lady in the spotted cow, and
I'm not quite sure you could do 13 pints in Malton these days, could you? Where you could have done, you could have done probably 20 odd in the good old days. That will.
I don't know. You'll start. You've got a choice of 4 in the old Malton Royal Oak now. Then you move on to Omvi, where you've got a choice of 3. Moving to the new malt, you've got another choice of three. So yeah, you probably
chapter
could.
two, going chapter two, Cross Keys,
you won't get around as many pubs.
Rose and Crown, Globe.
Yeah.
Tap, the Brass Castle.
Brass Castle.
Yeah, not bad. Yeah, we're getting up there. We're nearly in double figures. Okay, dokie. Right, Jay. So, any plans this week? What are we doing this next week?
Sadly, back to work full now. I've got a friend coming through tomorrow, so I've got to go out tomorrow night with my friend, but he's visiting for a night from Lancashire. He's been a big drinker, do without it really. So I think we are planning on returning to the Ainsty Brewery. I'm going to make that a Friday night haunt now. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
So no, sadly, all holidays over now. Back to work.
Yeah, back to work. Yeah. And I think I'll be out for this Friday this week again. And then it's my birthday coming up, so I might have a little trip to Thornbridge. I'm thinking. Oh, actually, I'm going to Manchester today. I've just, you forget what a great city Manchester is, actually, especially these days, because it's had so much kind of, regeneration work done, and there's so many great old and new pubs and drinking spaces, and I think and when the football's not in town, which is not often because if one's not playing, the other one probably is. But again, that's the other I did say and again, I've got to say the tram was great because you can park for free. We parked at Disney for free. You jumped in the tram in 13 minutes. You're in the city centre, so it's quite nice, really.
Say that though, mate. Looking back to Sheffield,
there are £1 seat sale going on, but for getting tickets for any long journeys was almost impossible.
Yeah.
Diving at work trying to find them, so it was a bit of a point to points for the long journeys. Maybe we should do one in Manchester, visit some of the suburbs we've not done before, really.
Yeah. Maybe that's something we can plan for. Maybe not. And then I think they normally have the Winter Beer Festival, don't they? Sometime in Manchester, normally. So that's worth doing. Okay, right, guys. Good night, and we'll be back on the airways probably in about 2 weeks' time. So see you all. Clink, clink. Drink well. Stay safe, and see you soon.